This episode is sponsored by the Everyday Athlete Gym in Glasgow. Hello and welcome back to Film Pro Productivity and Success, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creative people, all creative people really, to live a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 149. 3 tough productivity lessons learned in 2023. Every failure is a lesson learned about your strategy. Thomas A. Edison, unquote. So here we are again, folks, with a brand new season of the show, a half season at this stage of 6 episodes only, as I wasn't very well for about 5 weeks in November, the start of December as well, and I simply had to cut my cloth according to my need to get anything done at all, and that is what I'm going to make today's first lesson, in fact, or re-lesson, a lesson relearned, if you prefer, and it's that you must cut your cloth according to your need, and sometimes you just have to adapt, you have to simplify, work on the basics and focus on what is actually achievable. And that means too that you must let go of some things in order to achieve others. Cutting your cloth according to your needs, sometimes spoken as cutting your coat according to your cloth, means adjusting your actions based on the resources available. And the resources that I had trouble allocating in this scenario were time, energy and money. And as it approached the point for me to start recording new podcast episodes, I was hit firstly by the loss of a dear friend and fellow fight director, David Goodall, who sadly passed away in September, and then secondly by a terrible, awful cold that hung on and on and on with a heavy cough that more or less stopped me from planning anything, let alone researching and recording complicated lessons for this show. I found myself overwhelmed with the amount of work that I had to do just to keep things going, basically, to keep my head above water. And work that I had planned to do with David, and which would have been shared had he still been with us, I also found myself doing, and with that great responsibility of doing it well, as I felt his loss quite significantly, and I still do, honestly. And I've talked here about brain dumps quite often. I've done an episode on it, and that's getting what's in my head out and onto paper, a piece of paper or a whiteboard is what I prefer to use, and a task I had to do to start making sense of the overwhelming amount of tasks and goals that I had in my head. And I did this, and the amount of stuff that I had to do that was just on my mind that I was keeping in there actually took up about 3/4 of an 8-foot by 4-foot whiteboard on my office wall. And these weren't detailed notes, by the way. These were just the basics of what had to be done in my brain. Each one of these things that were just vomited onto that board had to be further broken down in order to be achieved. And to sort through all of that and prioritize, I ran it all through another productivity exercise, and that is the Eisenhower matrix, which you've heard me talking about again, I suppose. It's where you take your tasks basically and you split them into 4 sections: urgent and important tasks, urgent and not important tasks, not urgent but important tasks, and not urgent and not important tasks. And that system helped me a little bit, but frankly most of the tasks I had ahead of me still sat in the important sections, both urgent and non-urgent. So the exercise, although it was helpful, it left me really not that much further forward. If you're overwhelmed by the size of a problem, break it down into smaller pieces. Chuck Close, unquote. So eventually I came to terms, and it took a while, with the fact that I was unable to get what I had planned done. I just wasn't, there's no way I could get it done, not in a tight time frame at least, so I simply had to cut back on my plans, to cut my cloth according to my need, as I say. So I took the most important and urgent stuff and I scheduled it all out to complete before the end of 2023, and I decided to take 3 of the important but not urgent tasks and plan a 12-week year to complete them by the end of March in 2024. I haven't, at the time of recording, even made up that 12-week year plan, as I also had to put aside the planning of the 12-week year and all that went with it till I had the time to take care of it. And finally, the final thing I did, and it has affected this show, is that I halved the length of this season and I even reduced the number of lessons in this particular episode as well. I simply had to reduce what was on my plate. Hopefully there's enough left in here to keep you interested though, folks. What I didn't want to do was just not release a season, so I felt a mini season of 6 episodes was better than nothing at all. Put simply, if I hadn't done all of this, if I hadn't cut my cloth according to my need, I would have continued to stand like a rabbit in the headlights and never get anything done. I had to do the brain dump. I had to see if I could break it down, and then I had to make some tough decisions to decide what I can actually achieve and what I can't. Do you find yourself in this situation yourself? Does this happen often to you? Perhaps you will be able to adapt, simplify, and focus on what is achievable in the short term yourself by cutting your cloth according to your need. In the words of Confucius, keep it simple and focus on what matters. The second big lesson is something I've already mentioned earlier in the year, and it is simply to have a plan B. The most successful people are those who are good at plan B. James A. Yorke, unquote. Now, there's a whole productivity line of thought that says you should never have a backup plan. In fact, author and marketing strategist Seth Godin says that a well-defined backup plan is sabotage waiting to happen. He says, why push through the dip? Why take the risk? Why blow it all when there's a comfortable alternative instead? He argues, and I'm not saying I disagree with this, he argues that people who break through usually have got nothing to lose, and they almost never have a backup plan. And Henry Cavill says something that's similar. He says, I like to go full bore into something. If you have a backup plan, then you've already admitted defeat. And I like Seth Godin and I like Henry Cavill, but they obviously haven't been about to shoot a short film on a low budget when 2 of the locations they had locked down turned around and said no at the last minute. No, I'm not talking about having a plan B to your overarching dreams here. I'm talking about having backups, plan Bs for the small but important details that could make or break a project, and to help you get around the potential obstacles that might stop you from achieving those larger dreams. Having an environment that is supportive is really important for success. Tory Burch, unquote. Now, luckily, I surrounded myself with good people when it came to the shoot of The Traveller, and it was Paddy O'Brien, our leading man, who incidentally sponsored this episode, as it happens, that helped me to find the solution to the first lost location. I've talked about this in an earlier show, but I'll just recap a little bit. The second location too, I was able to recover myself by personally visiting the guy that was in charge of it and circumventing a few obstacles that were in the way with communications, one of them being a council film officer who at half a glance you might have thought was actually trying to disrupt our filming rather than to help it along. But had I been better prepared, however, or better anticipated the potential loss of these locations, I would have, and now I feel I should have, had at least a few ideas on where else we could have shot. Plan B? You've always got to have a plan B. Sylvester Stallone, unquote. Let me just take a moment here to ask you to subscribe to the podcast on your preferred app. I typically don't do ads like this in the middle of the show, but I'm mixing it up a little bit. And another thing I typically do, by the way, is to release episodes in blocks of 12 and 3 months on and 3 months off. So subscribing ensures that you won't miss any future shows when it comes to one of those gaps. Also, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or on Spotify. Reviews on Apple Podcasts, as it's now kind of officially known, are particularly influential in helping people come and find the show, but ratings on Spotify also significantly impact the algorithms that promote and suggest content to other listeners. But that's enough of an insert there. Thank you again for listening, folks. Let's get on with the show. And the final lesson that I learned in 2023, and I had a lot more I could have included here, by the way, but the final lesson that I've decided to include here in the show concerns doubt. The lesson is doubt is what does the most damage. Doubt is what does the most damage. If you must doubt something, doubt your limits. Pritchett, unquote. So when I was developing my short film, The Traveller, which incidentally has done quite well in the film festival circuit, I could do a whole show about that circuit, by the way, and how dodgy it is, and I probably will, but Most notably so far, the show has got into 8 legitimate film festivals, and it actually won Best Picture at the What Will They Think Of Next Film Festival in Texas, which I am very, very happy about. But let me stay on track with today's lesson. When I was developing The Traveller, I had this idea of having all the ghosts of the dead that the creature in the film has killed over the years hanging in the air and looking down upon the leading man as he stares back up at them at one point towards the end of the film. And here's the thing though, I never wrote that in the script. You see, I'd mentioned it to a few people, and 1 or 2 really didn't think much of the idea and thought it was stupid. Some did, but others just didn't get it. So I didn't include it in the script. All the way along, however, I was thinking I should put this in there, and eventually I decided I would shoot it. And we did include that scene, and it's kind of shoved in there, really, but of all the scenes in the film, that is the one scene that people always talk to me about. Perhaps if I had not cared so much for what others thought, I would have embraced the idea more fully, and I think overall it would have made for a better film. But doubt stopped that from happening, and I regret not embracing it sooner. Act as if success is certain. Pritchett, unquote. Now, Pritchett, author of U Squared, talks about how doubt can stop us from growing if we don't handle it right. He says doubt often comes from being scared of what we don't know or of failing, and this can make us hesitate. I certainly hesitated with The Traveller and including that really cool scene, and by the time I decided to include it, it was almost too late to make it work. I don't want to be influenced as to what I write in the next book, to hear those voices in my head when I'm writing. The idea of second-guessing your reader is dangerous, trying to please some notional reader looking over your shoulder instead of just yourself. Maggie O'Farrell, unquote. As a creative professional, I think it's important to face our doubts if we're going to be successful. In my particular situation I've outlined here, I allowed myself to be influenced by others and to limit my vision. Fear of ridicule or of doing the wrong thing stopped me from doing what I believed would work. Doubt was the thing that caused the most damage. And that's the final lesson that I'm bringing to you now. The only thing that can stop you is the doubt that you carry in your mind. And as Pritchett says, if you must doubt something, doubt your limits. So to recap on my hard-earned lessons of 2023, they are keep it simple and focus on what matters. That would be cut your cloth according to your need. Number 2 is have a plan B. And number 3, doubt is what does the most damage. So I hope that you found this episode helpful in some way. Many thanks again for jumping on board to listen to the show. I'm really very, very grateful for you taking the time out of your busy schedule to check in with me and listen to the show. I know how valuable time it is, I really do, and I am eternally grateful to you for spending it here with me. Next week, I'm going to be talking about having a positive outlook, even in dark times and when things aren't going well, and about moving forward into the new year, perhaps with a little bit of drive. One other thing I'd add is that you must go back and listen to episodes 81 and 82, entitled Planning Your Best Year Yet, as the exercise doing that will make all the difference to your chances of success in the year ahead. They're great shows. They're specifically designed to help you build a plan, create a blueprint that is going to help you find success in 2024. They're not just quick, thoughtless New Year's resolutions. This is about building a strategic plan that starts off your year with a bang. So go back and listen to them. Episodes 81 and 82, Planning Your Best Year Yet. I'll end today with a relevant quote from Bertrand Russell, who said this: "The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubts." Now take control of your destiny, keep on shooting, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity and Success. The music that you can hear right now is Adventures by Ehimitsu, and the executive producer of this season is Chris Somerville of Frontline Kit UK, uniform hire for film and TV. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website only, that's filmproproductivity.com, and you can follow my personal accounts on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or follow the show itself on Twitter at filmproprodpod or on Facebook at filmproproductivity. Please continue to support the show by subscribing, spreading the word, and leaving an awesome review.